Michael Eselun serves as the chaplain for the Simsman UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. Two-time TEDx speaker, Michael speaks extensively to healthcare professionals, patient populations, and faith communities across the country. He's also worked as an activist, educator addressing anti-LGBTQ bias in the larger community for over 30 years. Michael was recently inducted into the UCLA Semel Institute Eudaimonian Society in recognition of having lived a meaning-driven life. He has 4 volumes of CDs available for purchase, and they're all good. Contact Michael through his website, www.michaeleselun.com. And now, Michael Eselun.
Good morning. In this time of the pandemic, sheltering in place, all of us are deluged, it seems, with dozens of unanswerable questions, all competing for our limited attention and capacity to focus. How long is this going to last? How are we going to make it financially? How do we keep ourselves safe and healthy? How do we live with this kind of uncertainty? As we vacillate between one question or another, whichever happens to be working us over at any particular moment, there may in fact be one question that lays beneath all the others. What matters? As you know, I serve as the chaplain at the Simsman UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. And last fall, as a part of the UCLA Centennial, I was invited on behalf of the UCLA Department of Arts and Architecture to be a presenter at their special 10 Questions event, the Centennial Edition. It was a series of 10 evenings, each one devoted to one particular question for our times and our lives, each one explored by a multidisciplinary panel. When I told my husband, Scott, about this honor of having been invited, he of course asked me, "What's the question?" "What matters?" I said. "Oh," he said, "everything and nothing." And then he left the room. It's a pretty pithy answer, yes, but it's also true in a way. Everything matters and nothing matters. Our own individual lives, such as they are in this very moment, are in fact a culmination of countless decisions and choices we have made over the course of our lives, both large and small, each one informed by our sense of what mattered at the time. Do I marry this person or not? Do I take this job or not? Do I live in this city or not? Or on a whole other scale, do I buy this new pair of shoes or save my money? Do I eat that piece of chocolate cake or let it pass me by? Every one of those decisions is a reflection of our idea of what mattered. On a national scale, we only have to look as recently as the Democratic primary debates last fall to get a cross-section of what matters. Day one of my presidency, we will be addressing climate change. My #1 priority will be healthcare reform. No, for me, it's cleaning up the corruption in Washington or the catastrophe that's happening at our southern border. And yet, look at what has happened in the span of very few months. All of that has been trumped, you should pardon the expression, by the COVID-19 pandemic. Does it mean that all of that doesn't matter any longer? Of course not. It's just that this matters more right now. This has captured our attention. On a whole other scale, do you know what else matters? That you get home safely from your next outing to the supermarket, that we have enough cat food, that Rupert has been fed, or that I have milk for my oatmeal tomorrow morning. I suppose ultimately what matters is the thing right in front of us, this very moment. I remember in the early 80s reading a magazine interview with Rosalind Carter. This would have been not long after she and Jimmy had moved out of the White House and back to their home in Plains, Georgia. At the time of the interview, she was busily engaged in laying a new brick pathway up to the front stoop of their house. She commented to the reporter of how astonishing it was to reflect that just a few months earlier, she and Jimmy had been living in the White House, hosting state dinners, Camp David Peace Accord, all of that. And now, the most important thing in the world is that this brick is straight. And it matters, she said. Though I was such a young man, I was so struck by the profundity of that, so much so that it still sticks with me nearly 40 years later. It's almost Zen-like, isn't it? Around the same time, I remember taking some kind of self-development seminar or another. After all, it was the 80s, in which we were given the task of writing our own epitaph. Now, if you've never tried that task, it can be rather daunting and illuminating. It becomes even more daunting when we have to do it for real. My mom died a year ago last April. There's only so much room on those little bronze plaques. Which few words are you going to choose to encapsulate, to summarize an entire human life? What I chose for myself in my early 20s was, he was moved by life. I suppose what matters, I think, is quite fluid and changeable over the course of a lifetime, maybe even over the course of an afternoon. What mattered to me at 25 is not what mattered to me at 45, which bears little resemblance to what matters to me today at 65. I think in the first half of life, we're so consumed with achieving our goals, accomplishing something, perhaps starting a family, achieving success, as if we have the vaguest idea what that really means. Second half of life, I find, is a different story. And yet one inescapable truth for all but precious few of us is that a couple generations from now, no one will know or care or remember that you even walk the earth. So given that reality, what matters? I have to come back to Rosalind Carter, that the bricks are straight. And yes, while I'm focusing on this brick that's right in front of me, I have to be mindful of all of the overwhelming problems that plague our planet. But when it comes time for me to take my very last breath, what will I say matters then? In my role as an oncology chaplain, I would say I'm sort of in the coming out business. I'm creating a safe space for people to come out to me, to tell me their truth, often their deepest truth, and often at the most significant time of their lives, at the end of it. But it's not only a coming out business, it's also a meaning-making business, because once that truth is out there on the table, how do I contain it? How do I hold it? How do I make sense of it? That's part of a gift and exhilaration of this work. Every day I get that constant reminder, Michael, pay attention. Particularly as I move well into the third act of my life. When I reflect back on Acts 1 and 2, I realize how seldom it was that I was ever focused on the brick in front of me. I was always looking around the bend for the next choice, the next decision. How am I going to move to that next spot? Which class do I take? What do I major in? Which career do I pursue? Which clients do I pursue? Which relationships do I nurture to get me closer to wherever it is I think I want to go? And of course, that's still kind of true in a way, but perhaps with less urgency maybe. But then again, with maybe even more urgency, because at this stage of my life, the big what's next for me now is the home stretch, the final reckoning, as it were. So given that reality, what matters? When I'm breathing my last breath, what will I say matters then? There are, of course, as many answers to that question as there are individuals on the planet. And still, I hear some common answers to that question when folks are wrestling with that very question. What is it that makes life worth going through one more round of chemo, another dose of radiation, signing up for this drug trial, having another surgery for more guaranteed suffering? Because I'd like to see my son graduate high school or college. I'd like to see my daughter get married. I'd like to see my grandchild be born. Still, I find those to be deceptively tidy and simple answers, seldom revealing the whole picture. Many years ago, I worked on the inpatient bone marrow transplant unit at UCLA. Leukemia and lymphoma patients mostly, most in the hospital for many weeks, if not months. And there I met Leon, who was a difficult guy, prickly, not at all likable. In all of his weeks in the hospital, I never saw that he had a single visitor. And he was sort of proud of that. I don't need anybody, he would say. He had his own business and he had a dog who scared the neighbors. Leon presumed I was religious and a Christian, neither of which are true, but he seemed to enjoy duking it out with me, philosophically speaking. So that was the nature of my spiritual care. We would engage in these deep theological discussions. Once he had his transplant, things went south very quickly. And then the doctors came in with that awful news. There's nothing more we can do. Well, then his heart began to soften and the tears came. But the very next day, the docs came in and said, wait, we think you might qualify for this new drug trial coming down the pike. Oh, his spirits went through the roof. Mine too. Leon, this is great news. Tell me, what are you going to do with more time if you get it? I really wanted to know. I'd like to finish my invoicing, he said. My heart just sank. In total judgment, I admit, I was not a good chaplain in that moment. I did not ask the next obvious question. Oh, how interesting. Tell me, why are your invoices so important to you? No, I just sat there in stunned silence. I guess I was hoping he might say, I'd like to walk my dog on the beach one more time. I'd like to see one more beautiful sunset. I'd like to hear Rhapsody in Blue one more time. No, he said, I'd like to finish my invoicing. That's where he found his meaning. That's what mattered. Marianne was in her mid-40s. She had lived the previous 4 years with pancreatic cancer, and I had walked the last few months of her journey by her side. Not long before she died, I went to see her in the hospital. She was hooked up to every kind of tube and pump and hose, absolutely miserable, absolutely cooked. Michael, I'm done. Enough already. I'm ready to go. But it wasn't an option. She was trapped, you see. Because her family, of course, wanted her to keep fighting. Try the next drug trial, have the next surgery. Let's get a second opinion, a third opinion, a fifth opinion. Marianne, if you could call the shots right now, what is it that you would want? Oh, that's easy. Disconnect all of this. I'd ask my husband to get in bed with me right here and to hold me and look out that window over there at that tree across the street and say, look at that tree. Look at how those leaves capture the sunlight. Look at how that one flutters in the breeze. Isn't that beautiful? A God moment, she would call it. Over our months of conversation, she had told me about other God moments in her life, moments that had anchored her sort of into life, moments in which not much really happened, in which the stuff and the business of life just fell away, leaving space, room for an awareness of this moment being enough and being beautiful. I'd like one more God moment, she said. I met Evelyn on her first day of chemotherapy after having been newly diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She came to see me regularly every few weeks over the next 6 years for individual counseling, though she never wanted to talk about anything of any more significance than what she and her husband, Gene, had done the previous weekend. Despite all of my invitation, holding the door open to speak to all the other deeper themes of what might be lying ahead, she never took the bait. I didn't feel like I was doing much of anything as a chaplain, but she would conclude every visit by saying, oh, Thank you so much, Michael. I always feel so much better after just talking to you. I went to see her in the hospital the day before she died. Her husband, Gene, was there, of course. They had been married just forever, no children. The Buddhists think it's a good idea before one makes their transition to reflect upon the sweet memories of life, that it somehow might grease the wheels for the next incarnation. No matter what our beliefs are about such notions, it is not a bad idea. So I asked Gene to tell me that story again about how you guys met. I forgot how that went, but I remember loving the story. And he launched into the story again, and soon enough, Evelyn got a little distressed. She wasn't remembering. Undaunted, Jean pressed on. Oh, sure you do, honey. Remember, we went to that football game and we were in the back seat of the car. Now she was getting very irritated because the memory was gone forever. Jean changed course. Okay, honey, maybe you're just tired. Maybe you need to sleep. I tell you what, Michael and I will go out in the hall and we'll chat a bit and we'll give you a chance to rest. How about that? No, she said defiantly. I am not tired. I don't want to sleep. I want you both here. I just don't want anybody to talk. And so I got on one edge of the bed and Jean sat on the other edge of the bed, and we each took a hand and we just held it and we just looked at one another in silence. There is nothing to do, nothing to say, only holding this space for love. For the rest of my life, that moment has imprinted my heart with an image of what truly sacred space looks like. Maybe what matters most is what's left when everything that we thought had mattered has burned away. So, what matters to me today in this moment? This conversation matters. Kindness really matters. Friendship matters. Love matters. Being a witness to one another in our lives as they are. Connecting matters. Kinship, communion. It's an old-fashioned religious word, but I love the imagery of it, taking in and digesting our common humanity, our connection to one another, to nature, to the source of life. That matters. Of course, when I'm breathing my last breath, I'd like to think that I'll be able to say I made a difference. I relieved some suffering. I provided some encouragement. I fostered some communion here and there. I had a blast. That I saw the world that I loved really hard. But I am not so delusional as to think it was ever anything more than one conversation at a time, one brick at a time. We go through life making countless choices, offering countless gestures, perhaps of kindness here and there. Perhaps those have the farthest reaching impact of anything we pursue in our lives. Perhaps those gestures are our greatest legacy. Joseph Campbell said he believed it was important that we realize the eternal within, that we participate with joy in the sorrows of the world. I come back to that again and again as a kind of mantra, to participate with joy in the sorrows of the world. I don't know. Maybe it just comes down to being moved by life. So be it. Thank you.